between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. Events occur in real time.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to FPH Radio Live. It's Friday. That's right, it's Friday, which means we have football games in 24, 48 hours. I don't know. I'm not that good at math. So don't take my word for it. Just know that we have a full slate coming up here in just a couple days. We're in week 9. We're kind of crossing over to the second half of the season for the most part. 17 games. It gets a little tricky at this point for all these teams, but pretty much every team has played 8 games through this point of the season and will be playing their 9th very soon. So this is getting to the meat and potatoes part of the year, Thanksgiving, pun intended, and then, of course, getting into the playoffs and everything like that. So we got quite a bit to talk about, the least of which, John, is actual football games coming up this Sunday because, well, hey, we got a lot of mid-season free agency news that's been happening the last couple of days.
Yeah, it's great. It feels more like the NBA, where the NBA trade deadline can be a big day. Last week's NFL trade deadline wasn't a big day, but Odell Beckham was released by the Browns last week. Cam Newton was still out there, and they both signed with new teams yesterday, with Odell going to the Rams, which wasn't a real shocker to me. I kept throwing their name in there, Ian, because that's what they do. Los Angeles now has 3 NBA teams. It's the Lakers, the Clippers, and the Rams. They feel like an NBA team. They just go after stars, and it's not a surprise that they got Odell Beckham Jr. And then, of course, earlier in the day, we see Cam Newton signing with the Carolina Panthers. So those are the 2 big stories in the NFL, because both of those guys have massive personalities, right? Big brands. I think the biggest news yesterday is that Randy Gregory, the defensive end of the Dallas Cowboys, is going on the IR with a calf strain. He's playing at a Pro Bowl level, and Dallas does have Super Bowl aspirations. So that, to me, is the bigger news, like bigger impact on what happens in the second half of the season. But nonetheless, we were all waiting, bated breath for Odell Beckham Jr., and he finally announced where he's going.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I wrote a piece before he cleared waivers, kind of right when the news broke that he was going to be released, kind of projecting a few teams that could and should be interested, and actually had the Rams on the list. Now, they were one of the few contenders. Now, again, at the time of writing this, there was thought, and there was some reason to believe that the contract was going to be reduced, because I can't remember exactly what their cap number was, but it certainly wasn't enough to claim him. So in the piece, obviously, I wrote that if they don't claim him, they were one of the few teams that could have, if, again, the cap number was reduced by several million, but it wasn't. But I also wrote that if he makes it to free agency, don't rule it out, because first of all, you get rid of Deshaun Jackson, so there's obviously a void there, and you're certainly willing to take on contracts like this. Like you mentioned, just the nature of who the Rams have been. Of course, I mean this was right up their alley. Someone put out a list of all the people that have come and gone, and it's a long list of ex Pro Bowlers and All Pros and big names and all that stuff. So, when it comes to his decision to go there, it's funny and it's a bit ironic, not from his perspective, but just in general, that the team that ultimately signs the guy who's looking for more targets just released a guy who wanted to leave because he wasn't getting enough targets. Right. It just, it's funny. It's kind of a little haha. But, look, I think Odell Beckham will see the situation, be like, look, this is probably the best quarterback that he's played with. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. I mean, Eli was sort of at the tail end of his career when Odell came around. Of course, Daniel Jones, I don't think anyone's sitting there putting him in that situation. And Baker Mayfield, I think you're either on one side of the fence with him or the other. There's really no in between. I think it's either you think he's an elite, take your team to the next level quarterback, which I don't necessarily do that, or you think he's, just a pretty good player. I hate using the word game manager, but that's kind of the best way to describe it right now. So when it comes to the Rams, though, I thought it was funny. Now, I don't know how big of a Marvel movie buff you are, but I tend to think of myself as a fairly big fan. There's evidence all around this room right now to suggest that. But I thought it was funny that shortly after this, the meme or GIF, I don't know, whatever the hell you want to call it, the photoshopped image of Thanos and Sean McVay. The irony of this, yeah, I loved it too. But you know what the irony of it is, Sean? Thanos loses. so so these comparisons to this, I do find it a little comical because again, I mean it's kind of just the image is cool and the imagery is like, oh okay, it does, he's collecting all the Infinity Rings, all that stuff, but the movie, that he loses at the end, so what great is that? So my comparison of this was, yeah, sure, that makes sense because you know what, this winning, you know what this is going to win? The first overall seed. And you know what happens? By the time they play a playoff game, half of the NFL playoff field will have disappeared. Huh? Huh? See? There's the connection right there. So, yeah, sure. You know what? This actually does make a little bit sense. This victory, no one can beat them. How can you beat the most powerful team, powerful being in the universe? Well, that rings true during the regular season. And again, I think the Rams will eventually snag the number one seed, get the only bye week in the NFC. Then I think they lose because, as I said yesterday on another comment, what stops this offense? Well, guess what, John? A Matt Stafford interception in crunch time, because it's going to happen. At some point in the playoffs, there's going to be a situation where Matt Stafford throws probably the worst timed interception that they could have possibly asked for. And ultimately, it's going to be the end of their playoff run. And mark my words, John, it will happen. I don't know who against who, but it will happen.
I don't even buy into that they're going to be the number one seed. They already lost to Arizona in LA, so they have to go to Arizona to play the Cardinals later this year. They have San Francisco twice. Now, that doesn't sound too daunting, except that San Francisco owns the Rams. For whatever reason, the 49ers always beat the Rams. I don't know if it's a matchup situation or what the case is, but they always seem to find a way to beat them. So I don't even know if they're going to win their own division. And if they don't win their own division, they'll be the number 5 seed, which is what Tampa Bay was last year. But again, Tampa had Tom Brady. The Rams have Matt Stafford. Big difference there. They would, in theory, probably have to win 3 road games to get to the Super Bowl, right? So they would probably have to beat Dallas in the first divisional match in Dallas. Okay, let's say they get that done. Then they would have to beat Arizona or whoever in the divisional round. And then if they're fortunate to do that, either Green Bay or Tampa in the NFC championship game, all on the road with a quarterback that's never won a playoff game. So, yeah, I think that, it's a sexy move. It does improve their roster. We'll see how he fits in. But I don't think it makes them a clear-cut favorite, although I did pick them before the season to go to the Super Bowl. So I'm kind of arguing against myself. But look, we can make a case, right, Ian, that the top 5 teams in football are all in the NFC. I mean, I don't think that's far-fetched.
Yeah,
I mean, really, I know the Rams lost to Tennessee last week, but that was one game. I get it. But let's say 5 of the top 6 teams in the NFL are in the NFC, right? Dallas, Green Bay, Tampa, Arizona, the Rams, and then we'll throw Tennessee in right now because they have the best record in the AFC, and they just beat the Rams. So 5 of the 6 best teams are in the NFC. Getting through the NFC is going to be an incredible hill to climb.
Mm-hmm. No, and look, I don't I don't think, again, this to me, this move doesn't, and we kind of talked about this yesterday. It's like I don't think more offense is going to be what finally gets the Rams over the hump. You know what I mean? Like it's a nice move, but there's only so many passes to go around. So how impactful will it be? And is it really smart to take targets away from the league leading receiver? So again, this isn't a slam dunk move by any sort. The name, it being LA, the glitz and the glamour, the fact that the Rams are going for it, and I wonder what type of all in is this? Is this end of rounders type all in where he actually wins? Or is this Michael Scott at the celebrity or the Dunder Mifflin poker tournament where he bluffs on the first hand and gets called and gets knocked out? I kind of feel like this is the latter. I really do. Like I look at this team and again, I mean, I'm not as big of a Sean McVay fan as some people are. I mean, some people just live and die by this guy. I happen to think that he's a little bit of a goober, if that makes sense. Like, kind of like the whole idea of like, first of all, having someone hired specifically to keep you from running on the field, that just seems like nonsensical. There was this little quick story that came out in the off season about how he like kind of played like mind games with Kyle Shanahan to make sure some guy didn't get drafted, and it just seems so unnecessary and unnecessary. You know what I mean? It's just
Mhm.
like this whole Sean McVay lore is just it's kind of funny to me. Like I enjoy it because it does bring me humor, but I'm not like sold on this guy's like him being like a young prodigy type thing where people
I think he's a really good coach.
I
I
do
mean, look,
too. I do too. I
he
just
went through a situation that was bad for a long period of time. I mean, Jeff
but
Fisher was a
at
disaster
the
there,
at the same
and at
time
this point, they're constant contenders. So I think
they
he's a really good coach. I
they've
don't think
had a
he's Bill
lot.
Belichick, but
Yeah,
then
but
again, no one is.
they've had a lot of talent. At a certain
Sure.
point,
Yep.
he gets into not to compare the two careers because one had a very long career, uh, but at a certain point, when does he become just another Marty Schottenheimer? A
Well, he
guy
did get
who
to a Super Bowl.
well,
Marty
well, that's
Schottenheimer never got to a
no,
Super
and
Bowl.
that's yeah, but at the end of the day, if that's all he did, and all of a sudden you look at the
Oh, of
long
course.
list of great players that have come through that organization,
Yep.
they've had no shortage of great players. This isn't a talent
Hmm.
void situation. Um,
No.
and again, we talked about this before they got Odell Beckham Jr. This is a very clear Super Bowl or bust. If they do not win the
Hmm.
Super Bowl, this is a huge failure and could have huge repercussions moving forward because I know people want to pretend and laugh and say, oh, the cap isn't. No, the cap is very real. That's why they're doing some of the things they're doing to avoid the situations that they're dealing with the cap. Eventually, that's going to come back, whether it's in the form of not being able to pay one player, or maybe it's
Hmm.
in the form of having to, choose between two and you take the lesser one because you just can't afford it or you just can't, it's going to come back eventually. And if you don't have that Super Bowl win to fall back on, this whole, go for it attitude, reckless abandonment when it comes to draft picks and cap space and all that stuff, it's not going to be looked at as fondly as it is right now, which I'm kind of confused by to begin with.
Oh no, they're obviously in a Super Bowl or bust situation. There's about, I would say,
To be honest,
half
honestly,
a dozen
real
teams
quick, John,
that are in there
honestly
with
their
them.
expectation might be to win two Super Bowls this season. That's
It
how
could be,
high they
yeah.
are. Which again,
Sure.
you
Obviously, got
figure
to
out
win
how
the
that's
first one.
possible.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Tampa's Super Bowl or bust because of the quarterback. Green Bay Super Bowl or bust because of the quarterback. The Rams Super Bowl or bust. I don't know if Dallas and Arizona Super Bowl or bust. I think Dallas would like to play in a conference championship game for the first time since 1995, and Arizona's still, kind of a young emerging team. But in the NFC, those three teams that I mentioned are all in Super Bowl or bust mode. Two of them because they have all-time great quarterbacks that are certainly on the back nine of their careers, and then the Rams are just all in with any player they can possibly get. I'm going to throw this out to Ian. What is the possibility if he goes there, plays a couple games, gets two targets one game, three targets another game, and bails out? Is there a chance Odell Beckham Jr. plays on yet another team by the end of the year that the Rams say, this ain't working out, we just cut him, and now he goes somewhere else?
You're
I
talking
like,
Randy Moss 2010. I mean,
right, yeah. I mean, didn't
um,
Randy Moss play on three different teams in 1 year? He ended up in Tennessee after playing in Minnesota.
I don't
Right.
I
Then he
don't
went to San Francisco the next year. I mean, I could see that happening. I mean, I think the Rams will show a lot of patience and try to get him involved. But if I'm Cooper Kupp, who's apparently playing for a contract, like Cooper Kupp's going to be a top five paid wide receiver, like all of a sudden, if he's getting fewer targets, is he going to be all in on that?
well, I mean, at the same time, Odell Beckham Jr. is also playing for a contract.
True.
So
So now,
I
if you got a bunch of
yeah.
receivers all
Well,
playing for contracts, good luck to Matt Stafford and John McVay.
I think I can definitely see where that can become an issue. Again, if there's we've seen Tampa obviously the Brady factor is a big deal. Tampa obviously managed a lot of very talented wide receivers with some ego, so it can be
Sure.
done. It certainly can.
With Tom Brady. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, again,
When he decides to flash 7 rings in your face, you say, you know what, I better listen to this guy. He's pretty good.
yeah, I
And
should
to a lesser
probably
degree, I think Rodgers would have that autonomy in the huddle as well. If he had gone to Green Bay and started, you know, bitching and moaning, I think Rodgers has the cachet to say, Odell, when you get open, you're going to get the ball, but we've got an offense to run here.
Yeah,
And I think he has that cachet too. Even though he only has the one Super Bowl, he's still, a top tier quarterback. But Brady's the ultimate guy who could just say, "Shut up."
yeah, you do this, and yes, sir. Well,
Yeah.
not yes, sir, because as we know, he doesn't. According to reports, he requires people to say sir. So maybe that is
That's
true.
only
Maybe
Donald Trump.
Yeah,
That's only Donald Trump that says yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think he'll last the season. I don't know how. I don't think he's going to have gaudy numbers, but I think he's smart enough to realize that, yeah, he's only 29 years old. If he it's only a 1-year deal. So if he plays well individually, and especially if the team continues to have success, then he's going to get a good contract just based on his name. So he's a guy who doesn't necessarily have to put up these huge numbers. He just has to simply exist and do it in a way that doesn't distract the team or bring the team down, and does perform a little bit. So if he catches a few touchdowns, has a few dozen receptions over the course of the last half of the season, I think people will be fine with that. And I think there will be many teams willing to give him a nice contract, multi-year contract after the season when he's a free agent once again. So I think he'll definitely last. If anything, just for that, like in the back of his mind, he's got to realize, like, hey, this is an opportunity to get another long-term deal, relatively long-term deal for a little bit more added security. So I think he's going to qualify. But whether or not the team wins, I don't think that they will. If you're going to ask me, are they a Super Bowl winning team, a Super Bowl losing team, or a team that doesn't make the Super Bowl? I'm going, well, quite obviously with a team that doesn't make the Super Bowl, because I have my pick, and it's been pretty right for many years, and that's I don't bet against Tom Brady. I just don't. Yeah, I mean it is. I probably have the best pick percentage pre start of any season of anyone, because hey, I just picked Tom Brady and win the Super Bowl every year, and hey, half the time I'm right. As crazy as it sounds, half the time I am right.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good. And then again, even going other times and not winning. I mean, the man's gone to 10 Super Bowls in 19 years. I mean, it just blows my mind away. It's as likely Tom Brady goes to the Super Bowl as it is Kevin Durant to hit a shot. And we know how great Kevin Durant is. I mean, that kind of puts it in perspective. So, yeah, Tampa's still the team to beat. They're the defending champs. They've got him. They've got some issues, obviously, defensively.
Oh,
we want to see what their secondary looks like. Green Bay looked like maybe the best team in football up until last week, and the excuse is, of course, they didn't have their quarterback, but they have some issues on defense. I think the defense is really good. I want to see if Jair Alexander and Darius Smith come back. Then I think the defense could be really good, and then it falls on Aaron Rodgers. No excuses. You've got the defense, you've got the weapons, the offensive line is coming together. It's up to you to deliver, and then he's the guy that has to embrace that and actually do it. So those are the teams I think that I would still take over the Rams. And even when we're talking about the Rams, they have to go to Green Bay in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
I mean,
out of the bye, though. Out of the bye, which does favor LA a little bit here. So
it does. Yeah, but at that Lambeau, Lord knows it'll be 19 degrees. It could be snow. Who knows? And Stafford, always been a dome quarterback. Yeah, he's been a dome quarterback. He's a really talented guy, but I agree with you. He's prone to throw an interception at the world's worst time. I mean, there's interceptions, and then there's like, oh my God, he threw an interception.
That's why it's going to happen, whether it's in the divisional round, whether it's in the conference championship game.
Somewhere,
one at some point it's going to happen, and it's going to cost them a chance to go to the Super Bowl. And it's one of those things, and we've talked about Stafford a little bit here, and obviously as someone who follows Green Bay, speaking of you, obviously you've seen a lot of Matt Stafford because of him going up against the Packers, but he's a talented, pretty good quarterback, but beyond that, it's just he's been in the league long enough, and I know people have kind of said or floated the idea of a lack of talent around. I'm like, that's absurd, because if you think about the talent, I mean, just the pure talent around him. Again, he's had plenty
Calvin
of it.
Johnson might be the most gifted wide receiver we've ever seen.
Sure,
physically
absolutely.
gifted wide receiver ever. I mean, Jerry Rice is the greatest, and Randy Moss was great. But from a physically gifted standpoint, I don't know if there's anybody better than Calvin Johnson. There's not a lot of dudes walking on a football field that are 6'5", 240 that run a 4.340 with great hands. I mean, there's just not many guys we've ever seen, like none. And then he had other really cool. Tate a hell of a receiver. Marvin Jones Jr.,
Yep.
Kenny Golladay. He's had some weapons there. He's had some decent defenses with Ndamukong Suh, and he did make the playoffs, and then didn't play well in any of the playoff games. But yeah, I can't tell you how many times I saw the Packers play the Lions, and you'd watch the two quarterbacks, and you'd say, "Wow, these two guys are really talented." But the difference is Rodgers just doesn't turn the ball over, whereas Matt Stafford would throw this god awful interception midway through the third quarter that would quickly flip the game around, and I was thankful for that. But that's the difference between a great quarterback and a really talented quarterback. Big difference there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's why I say, at the end of the day, I just, obviously, I think Matt Stafford's great. I just don't know if I don't know. I mean, I think everything would have to align perfectly for him
Mhm.
to bring the Rams to the Super Bowl. Obviously, that doesn't have to happen with Brady. We know that. I mean, again,
Mhm.
and some of these other quarterbacks, I think, have a little bit more cachet and a little bit more.
Mhm.
You've seen a little bit more to make you think that, yeah, no matter what, I think I'm gonna feel comfortable going with this guy. But with Matt Stafford, it's like I'm like, like, would you ask me, if you would ask me to put money on it, like, hell no, I ain't putting any money on Matt
No,
Stafford
I'm
and the
not either.
Rams. And at the end of the day, again, part of that is, yeah, I'm a little bit, not as rosy on Sean McVay and this lore that he's built up because at the end of the day, I mean, we kind of or we knuckleheads out there criticize Tom Brady for needing help, and it's we're not even going to go down that road because we don't want to waste too much time. But you look around, how much talent does Sean McVay need to win a game? Like Jesus, like I mean, you're talking about
Oh,
Aaron Donald, Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey, for
yep.
whatever it's worth, Matt Stafford, and the list goes on. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, this is the guy people want to anoint. It's like, oh, here's the greatest thing ever, and it's like, well, I mean, sure, let's see him win something first. It's kind of like the whole Patrick Mahomes thing. Like, why are we in a rush to make this guy this great thing? Let's evaluate. Let's take a deep breath. Like, because if you go back to that Super Bowl against the Patriots, and I know we've talked about it, John. Um, the Rams lost that game when Sean McVay walked up to Bill Belichick all gaga-eyed and like, "Oh my God, it's Bill Belichick! Oh my God!" Like
Yep.
that game was over, and Bill knew it too.
Right.
Bill probably was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, this is going to be a breeze," because clearly, this stage is too big for you right now. And
Look at
again,
look
maybe
at
yeah, go ahead.
look at some of the coaches that have had success against Belichick, and there are some, right?
Hmm?
Um, you know, uh, John Harbaugh's had success against Bill Belichick because I don't think he's intimidated by Belichick. I think he respects him, which you have to. The man is a phenomenal coach, but I don't think he's intimidated by him. Rex Ryan had some success against the Patriots. He did beat them in a playoff game. I don't think he was overly intimidated by Belichick. Andy Reid isn't. Yeah, if you're looking across, certainly one guy that isn't is Mike Vrabel. I think
Yeah,
he just loves the challenge of going up against Belichick. I think he beat him 3 straight times, including a playoff game. So that's yeah. I mean, when you saw that after the fact, it's like, man, I wish I had a lot of money that day. I would have bet
oh
the
God,
Patriots
I
to
would
win
I
that
would have
game because
put
I mean,
everything.
it looked like it was his son, seeing his long lost dad and being in awe of him coming back from the war. It's like at that point I'm like this, and then this Jared Goff, obviously, who has never won a game without John McVay as his coach. That may be his biggest accomplishment, right? Because how we always
Win
have this,
games with Jared
Belichick,
Goff.
Brady. Yeah, you get to win a game without John McVay as the head coach, and now that he's had a better quarterback, the Rams are in contention. But again, I'm not even sure if they're going to win the division. I mean, they could go 13-4
Yeah.
and be the 5 seed. That's how top heavy the NFC is this year. And
Well, that's the
I'm
thing.
buying on
Yeah.
Arizona, right? Because I mean, they won a pretty impressive game last week with Colt McCoy as their quarterback. So obviously they're pretty darn good.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. It's like they're not even guaranteed. Now, again, I do think that the regular season can be far more unpredictable. So to me, I do
Right.
think that like sometimes these moves are better suited for like the regular season glory, and that's why I think that that Thanos uh, comparison actually works very well because eventually it's just going to be Tom Brady at the end. And I said this too. It's like every year, all the storylines, all the upsets, all these like mid-season acquisitions, and at the end of the day, it's just Tom Brady hoisting another Lombardi, and I love it. I love it. It brings joy to my
I would never know that, Ian. I would never know that you float when he wins the Lombardi.
No, never, never. But
I'm shocked. I
speaking
tell you, I'm shocked.
speaking of another former Patriots quarterback, and real quick, I want to mention this. Cam Newton, and I am absolutely floored at the contract that he got. Not that I don't think that he deserves it. I think I was, and again, this is something else we've talked about before. I was rooting for him. I thought he was going to get an opportunity here. I think in hindsight now, well, look, Bill Belichick made the right move. That's no knock on Cam. It's just clearly, Mac Jones was ready for the challenge. He's still growing, but he was clearly ready to start from day one. So that's not a knock on Cam. That's just a decision based on, how you should be building a team. So to see Cam go back to Carolina is pretty awesome. I'm excited for him. I want to see him play, and I want to see him succeed because, again, from the moment that he was a Patriot to the moment that he wasn't, he was a consummate professional. He was a great part of the community, a part of the team. And for what it's worth, dealt with a very difficult situation last year, trying to replace Tom Brady, coming in late, all that stuff. So I'm happy for him. I don't know what it does for Carolina necessarily because, again, I think that's a team that might be a little lost of sorts. Bringing in Cam might kind of rejuvenate and get them a few wins, but we've spoken about the NFC. It's going to be really, really hard to crack that playoff list, and right now they're pretty behind the eight ball. So.
Yeah, I mean, you might see a 9-8 team sneak into the NFC playoffs because you got all these teams that are going to win 12 or more games, those 5 teams that we continually talk about. But I think this was a business decision as much as anything else. I had a few friends that were in Carolina, the Patriots Carolina game last week. It felt more like a Patriots home game. Patriots fans do travel, and it's a pretty cool place to go in, early November. You're going to get decent weather down there, with golf courses, whatever. So it felt more like a Patriots home game. Now, David Tepper, who's the new owner of the Carolina Panthers, is ultra aggressive. I think he's kind of like the East Coast version of Stan Kroenke. Don't be surprised if Carolina goes big game hunting in the off season. I think he wants to sell seats and get some traction back in the organization and bring Cam Newton back. What's that?
Are you saying Devontae Adams is going to go to Carolina next season?
No, you think? No, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to Carolina.
No,
I'm convinced. I think Cleveland is the best place for Rodgers because of the roster they have, but I don't know if he wants to go from Green Bay to Cleveland. I think Denver's probably where he's going to end up, or maybe Pittsburgh. But yeah, they're going to go. I'm thinking more quarterback.
Honestly,
I think Carolina's going to be in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes, or Russell Wilson, who I think is probably going to move on from Seattle. They're going to do something.
Well, the one downside though to Cleveland, if I'm Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Rodgers is a guy who does take sacks, you're going to have to play Pittsburgh and Baltimore twice a year. That's not good.
That's true.
That's not good.
No.
If I'm Aaron Rodgers, and again, he's a guy who does take more sacks than some of his contemporaries.
Well, Minnesota and Chicago had good pass rush.
Oh, sure, but
this
is Baltimore and Pittsburgh. I think I think if there's any duo of teams in a division that can compete with that, yeah, I think it's certainly those two. So
unless he goes to Pittsburgh and then you're facing Cleveland. Who the hell wants to face Myles Garrett? I really fear for Mac Jones on Sunday. If Isaiah Wynn is left on an island with Myles Garrett, I may just shut the TV off.
Yeah.
And Belichick's not going to do that. There's going to be somebody helping Isaiah Wynn on that left side if Myles Garrett is opposite him, because that would be a total mismatch.
Well,
but I get you.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of glad you brought the Patriots up because I did want to mention them real quick before we kind of fly through our picks here for the week. But I'm going to ask you: can you name 2 teams that are better than the Patriots right now in the AFC?
I would say Tennessee for sure. I mean, only because the record is there, and they've had some impressive wins, right? I mean, they've beaten some iron. So I would say they're right now the better team. I do think Buffalo is better. I think Buffalo's defense is really good, but their offense is completely out of sorts. I think Cleveland's going to beat the Patriots Sunday, so I think they're better. But yeah, not many teams. Yeah. Again, that group of 9 that has 5 wins is just interchangeable. I mean, like I said, 2 weeks ago, Cincinnati, if the season had ended, was the number 1 seed. Now they're out of the playoffs. And Vegas is up and down, and Denver's up and down. Everybody's up and down in the AFC. Tennessee is kind of established themselves as the best team. But let's not forget they lost to the Jets, and they don't have Derrick Henry. So how confident we can be? How confident can we be in Tennessee? So yeah, the Patriots are right there. No, this is a huge game Sunday.
Yeah, and of all the teams, I don't think they're the most talented at any particular position. I just think that they've played probably the most consistently from start to finish. And again, that might be enough to really make headway in the
Right.
AFC. Now, again, if you face one of these NFC teams, you might have to, really play above your means a bit. But for the most
Hey,
part,
how they play against two of those 5 teams from
that's
the NFC
that's
already, and they
true.
were right there
That's
with both
true.
of them.
That's
You know what I'm
that's
saying? So
very true.
again, the only game that they were really out of was New Orleans, and that was still a one-score game midway through the fourth quarter.
But
And
yeah,
look,
that
New
that
Orleans,
game you could just
that was
tell
just a
they
weird game.
yeah.
Yeah, New Orleans also, and I think didn't Tampa lose that same day? I think the Patriots and Tampa the week before their big matchup in early October were both kind of out of sorts,
Yeah,
right? I mean, it's just because the story already started.
yeah.
And New Orleans is one of those teams. Every other week, New Orleans looks like the best team in football. They do. I mean, they destroyed Green Bay, then lost the next week, came here and handily beat the Patriots. They've beaten Tampa Bay, and then they've lost to Atlanta the following week. So New Orleans is almost like, how do you even get a hold of what the hell they're going to do other than every other week they're good?
Yeah, I don't know. I like I said, I think they're
No, the Patriots played Dallas and Tampa 20 to game. So yeah, to your point, and the other loss was to Miami by 1 point or by 2 points on a fumble. So yeah, I mean the Patriots have, like you said, they've shown up every week.
and here's the thing, like I thought going in, like, to really compete, they'd have to, they're probably a year or two away. I mean, it's just how, these things progress. You want Mac Jones to get comfortable, but with how this AFC conference is, it's like, well, maybe you push that up a little bit. Like, and
No,
again,
yeah,
you have to get good play from your players. I think the Patriots defense is really starting to round into shape, round into form. J.C. Jackson is earning a lot of money every single time
he sure is.
he steps on a football field. And again, like we said, we sat here and sung the praises of Mac Jones, not claiming he's a top 5, 10 quarterback, but just saying how well he's playing for where he's at in his career. And you couple that with really good coaching and everything, and you have a team that could. I mean, again, if you're going to ask me, is there any team in the AFC right now I don't think that they can beat? Absolutely not. Like, do I think Buffalo could be better than them? I agree with you on that. But do I think it's impossible for them to beat Buffalo? Absolutely not. Like, I might even pick them in their first matchup against Buffalo. It depends on where we're at in a couple weeks. So, it's going to be interesting to see how it all folds out. And to your point, this is a huge, huge game because not only could they get 2 games above 500, but they're beating one of those other teams that has 5 wins.
Right.
And you start collecting those victories, and that's going to make a huge difference down the stretch.
Yeah, you look at it. You play Cleveland, you play Indianapolis, which is in playoff contention. You play Tennessee later in the season, and then of course you play Buffalo twice. So yeah, you've got more than half your schedule is against teams that you're going to have to beat out to get into the playoffs. So the best way to do it is head to head. Yeah, you beat Cleveland this week. You're up a game in the standings, and you own the tiebreaker over them. Although I can just see the final week of the season, like 11 teams fighting for 4 spots or whatever it is, and the tiebreakers will give you a possible headache. But nonetheless, just win the games, move on to the next week, and let's tell about it. And then after this game, you get a Thursday nighter in Atlanta. And all of a sudden, Atlanta's 4-4, and that's a weird setup, isn't it? I mean, traveling on the road on a Thursday night's never easy. So, yeah, it's a daunting task, but I think they're up for the task. They played well in 8 of the 9 games, or well enough to win, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what you can ask for. They haven't really had any stinkers other than the New Orleans game.
Yeah, and again, this weekend is gonna go a long way in determining what their future is this season. I think, and I hate putting so much on just one win or whatever. But all right, so if you're looking on the screen, you'll see that I have the schedule up for this weekend. So John, you and I, we're gonna fly through these. We're not gonna spend too much time on any particular game. We're just gonna try to get through these as we're running out of time here because we like to talk about a lot of other things. Because hey, guess what? News comes up. So yeah, let's get right into it. And we're gonna start. Guess what? With Atlanta, team you were just talking about. Atlanta heads to Dallas. Dallas looking to rebound after that pretty surprising loss last week. Very underwhelming. So in this one, I got to say Dallas at home. Like I like how Atlanta's playing, and I might have picked them if this game was in Atlanta, but I think Dallas rebounds in this one. And
Yeah, I think Dallas rebounds. I question the offensive line, the availability of Tyron Smith, who you really want to look and see an MVP candidate who's not a quarterback or a skilled guy. Tyron Smith, when he plays, Dallas is really good. When he doesn't, they're not very good. That could be obviously a concern for Sunday, but I'll pick that.
Next, we have New Orleans heading to Tennessee. Another kind of odd matchup. Which New Orleans team are we going to get? Which Tennessee team are we going to get? Is the Adrian Peterson acquisition for real, or is that just a one-hit wonder and is finally going to catch up to him that they don't have Derrick Henry anymore? I like Tennessee in this one. Again, I think New Orleans is pretty good. I like Tennessee at home, and I think at least the Adrian Peterson signing looks good once again this weekend. So give me Tennessee.
I'll go with New Orleans. They're weak to shine. Like they could probably play the '85 Bears this week and win, and then lose to the 2008 Lions the next week. That's how up and down this team is. I'm going to pick New Orleans to win this Sunday.
Next, Indianapolis hosting Jacksonville, battle of the AFC South. I got Indianapolis in this one as yeah. There's a lot of meaning in my tone. As big as the Jacksonville matchup was or win was last week, I don't think it repeats itself. Not to give too much credit to Indianapolis because they're another team that has potential, but is a boneheaded mistake from their quarterback away from losing the game. I don't think they lose this one. I think Jacksonville has really pushed the limit on how many games they're going to win. So give me Indiana in this one.
Yeah, Colts should win. They need to win, get to 5-5, and remain in playoff contention.
All right, next, New England hosting Cleveland. Now, again, this is going to be a fun matchup. I think it's going to be a pretty close one. I like New England at home. I mean, they've won 2 in a row. They've really started to find a more consistent way of playing. They just have to protect the football. If they can protect the football and not turn the ball over, I think New England wins this game. So give me the Patriots at home.
I'm going to go with Cleveland. I picked them to win the Super Bowl. I thought they looked good last week in Cincinnati. Now that they don't have the headache of Odell Beckham Jr., maybe opens up their offense. Obviously, the big question is Nick Chubb playing for Cleveland. He's one of the 3 or 4 best running backs in football, and they're a run-first team, so that's a big question. I think it's going to be a slugfest. I look at like a 17-16 type game, but I think Cleveland's just a little bit better.
Buffalo at the Jets. Now, this is interesting, John. Mike White, greatest quarterback of all time, has only started 3 games.
He might be your next guy,
Maybe, no, he's a Jet. He's a Jet. You kidding me?
Well,
I burn effigies, in my backyard of him and anyone in a Jets uniform. Maybe it's a little wishful thinking. I'm going to pick the Jets in this game. I just don't like the way Buffalo's offense has been playing, as great as their defense is, and we saw a great defensive performance out of them last week. This league is an offensive league. If you're going to play sloppy on offense, well, guess what? You're going to lose. I think the Jets at home, might get a little bit of that divisional matchup magic and upset the Buffalo, who, you got to believe that the Bills, the team, organization, coaching staff, are feeling a little pressure because, well, guess what? They were the anointed AFC East runaway winners for the next 10 years. And right now they're in a potential slugfest with the Patriots for that division title.
Right.
So give me the Jets in this one in a pretty surprising upset.
All right. You and Rob Dinkovich. I saw him on ESPN early today, picked the Jets upset Buffalo as well. So fellow Patriot Rob Dinkovich is right on board with you. I'll go with Buffalo here. I mean, if they lose to Jacksonville one week and the Jets the next week, then they really are frauds. But I think they'll win this week.
All right. Next, we have Pittsburgh hosting Detroit. And, once again, six games in a row. This is going to be a very home-friendly week at least up until this point. Pittsburgh hosting Detroit. I got the Penguins. Jesus. I got the Steelers. Might as well be the Penguins. Who cares? I mean, Penguins play the Lions. The Steelers play the Lions. It doesn't matter. The Pirates.
I know. Sidney Crosby could come out and throw 3 touchdown passes against Detroit, right?
Exactly.
Malkin would probably be a pretty decent tight end, right?
Yeah, he's got some size. He's got some size and shiftiness. He could do some work. But so give me Pittsburgh in this one. Unfortunately, Detroit falls to 0-9.
Pittsburgh, but I think Detroit covers. I think.
It's not going to be a blowout.
Yeah, it'll be a 3-point game to Pittsburgh's offense. Although it looked better Monday against Chicago than it's looked for most of the year. But yeah, Pittsburgh. This is one of those games you can't lose if you're a playoff team because when it gets to the end of the year, you look back and go, "Why the hell did we lose to the Detroit Lions?"
Yeah.
That kept us out of the playoffs. So Pittsburgh will get it done, but I think it'll be You know what? They're going to blow them out. I'm going to change my mind. The only reason I say that, I can't picture Jared Goff feeling with that pass rush.
Fair enough.
When he's uncomfortable,
That's fair.
he might be the worst quarterback in football when he's uncomfortable. He's going to be uncomfortable on Sunday.
Well, in the last of the 1 o'clock games, it will not be a clean sweep of me picking home teams because in the last of these games, it's Tampa at Washington. Now, last year, that Washington secondary was pretty good. I think they had the sixth ranked pass defense. They are the worst pass defense in the league as of right now. You know who has the best pass offense in the league? Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Mhm.
You do the math. This is not going to be a fun day for football team fans at home in Washington. I think Tampa, coming off a bye, coming off a loss, I think they very handily take care of business. So give me the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I see them putting up like 42 points.
Yeah.
Like I think he throws 4 touchdowns, and they win handily because Washington had a great year last year. Great year, going 7-9 and making the playoffs. I don't know if that's a great year, but yeah, they've come back down to earth this year. And again, that team's never going to contend with that ownership. So I'm going to go with Tampa in a blowout.
Next, we have to kick off the 4 o'clock games. We have Carolina at Arizona. There's something going on outside my window, apparently. I don't know if you can hear that, folks. I
Sounds
apologize.
like a hurricane or a tornado, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so you can hear that. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Or a monster. Is there a monster outside your window?
I hope not. I hope
no.
Well, I think it might just be some yard work. Man, I forgot to shut my window, which was a very rookie mistake on my part. So I apologize for those who may be annoyed by the noise in the background. But anyways, first of our 4 o'clock games, Carolina at Arizona. Cam Newton, I'm assuming, is not going to be starting this game. It'll be PJ Walker, former XFL star, of course. I like Arizona in this one again at home. I think they're just clearly the better team right now. Carolina might give them some fits defensively because, as we've seen, Stephon Gilmore is still a really good player. But I think Arizona walks away with this one and goes to 9-1.
Yep, I agree. Again, can't let up in that highly competitive NFC. I think Arizona takes care of business.
This is a tough one to pick. Los Angeles hosting Minnesota, but I'm going to lean with the home team on this one. I think Justin Herbert continues to kind of rebound from a little poor stretch that he had a couple weeks ago and plays a pretty solid game. Give me the Chargers.
Yeah, the Chargers, Vikings, Falcons, they're always playing these bizarre games. This one will probably come down to the end. Wouldn't surprise me if it goes in overtime. I'll take the better quarterback in Justin Herbert over Kirk Cousins.
Next,
give me the Chargers.
Give me the Chargers. Philadelphia at Denver. Yeah. I mean, I'm picking these on the spot right now. I didn't pick this game earlier, so I'm still trying to figure through my mind. I'm being a little biased towards home team, so I think I'm going to continue to do that. I think Denver's defense, even without Von Miller, is still a pretty good unit, and I think that's what's ultimately going to shift the balance of this game. So give me Denver at home.
I'm going to take Philadelphia in this game. I think Denver had a huge win at Dallas, maybe a little flat this week. I'll go with Philadelphia in a mild upset.
Green Bay hosting Seattle. We assume Aaron Rodgers will be back under center. This was a really, and we also assume that Russell Wilson will be back under center, which is a very important thing to note. Which kind of gives them both kind of they're kind of on the same level. They didn't play last week, so they're both coming in sort of a little bit rusty. Obviously, Russell Wilson's supposed to do more games, but at the end of the day, again, I'm going to kind of just stick with the home team. Although I think this is going to be a pretty close matchup. But give me Green Bay at home.
Yeah, I think Green Bay will prevail. Rodgers apparently is asymptomatic, so we have to pass 2 COVID tests within the 24-hour period. If he does so, he can come into the building on Saturday. It's never good to miss a whole week of practice, even if you're an elite quarterback. I think they'll get the job done because Seattle's cornerbacks are god-awful, and if he plays, I think they'll be able to exploit them and get the job done. When Seattle plays Green Bay, the home team wins. It's just been that way since Russell Wilson has been in Seattle, since Aaron Rodgers has been in Green Bay. So I'll take the Packers at home.
All right, next on Sunday Night Football, we got the Las Vegas Raiders hosting the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, I'm going to stick with the home team. I'm going with the Raiders. And really, there was a time where I would pick against Kansas City, and it would be like, oh, now it's just like, all right, sure. I mean, you're probably better off picking against Kansas City because, as we said, even in that victory last week, it wasn't inspiring any confidence in me if I were a Chiefs fan, and certainly the play of Patrick Mahomes has not improved my liking if I were a Chiefs fan. So I think the Raiders have performed better than I expected. Certainly post Gruden, post this Henry Ruggs situation. And I think at home hosting Kansas City, who they've beaten on a number of occasions before,
Mhm.
I think they do it again. So give me the Raiders.
I'll take the Chiefs just to be a little bit different, and I think they kind of snap out of it a little bit this week. I've been saying that for several weeks, and it hasn't happened. They've scored 36 points in the last 3 games. Did you ever think you'd see that? Well, you did probably, but 36 points in the last
Yeah,
three
I'm not,
games.
no, don't you? I'm the bad person to ask, or the wrong person
I
to
know.
ask in all these. I'm like,
Well,
yeah, no, I did say that actually.
if I'm talking to Andy Reid, I go, Andy Reid, do you believe your team has scored 36 points in the last 3 weeks? He'd say, yeah, I'm in disbelief of that. But yeah, I think they'll get the job done. Again, the Raiders can put pressure on a quarterback. You know that. They've got a nice pass rush. This should be a fun game, though, in Vegas. Would probably be just old AFL style 38-35 type game like it was twice last year. But I'll take Kansas City.
And there we have it. That's all
Yep.
our Sunday games. So thanks everyone, of course, for tuning in. Join myself and the FBC NFL Sunday crew at 10 a.m. on Full Press NFL on Twitter. You can find it on our YouTube channel, on Twitch, and of course on Facebook as well, where we are just racking up all the followers. So definitely check that out. We'll be breaking down once again all these games, doing our play pickup, prop bets, and all that fun stuff. So for us, we will be back Monday morning to break down everything that we saw. But then again, we just told you everything you're going to see this week, so there may not be a point to it. So, but anyways, tune in 9 a.m. Monday morning. We'll see you then. Have a great weekend, folks.